The title of this action research project is Goals in the Classroom: An Attempt to Raise Motivation and Reading Levels by Amanda Drew. This action research study investigated the effects of goal setting in the area of literacy and student motivation over a 6-week span. This was targeted on a group of students with reading levels below grade level expectations. The participants were 6 first-grade students in a general education classroom. Following baseline measurements, the targeted group of students was determined by having the same reading level. The targeted group of students were given a running record on week 1, week 3, and week 6 to monitor reading level growth. Half of the targeted group created reading goals, the other half of the targeted students did not. Students that set goals were met with weekly to go over progress that was monitored by the students through stamina logs and student goal setting notebooks. The results showed achievement in student reading levels, but further actions are needed to prove if goal setting was the factor. This study did provide evidence that goal setting can allow for an increase in student motivation to read. The purpose for this study is to find out if goal setting in the area of literacy can help build motivation and reading levels. I took interest in this topic of goal setting because I want all of my students to meet grade level expectations and to be motivated in their learning and to grow as a reader. I did predict that through goal setting, students will raise their reading levels and become motivated by achievement of their goals. The research questions I had were: how does goal setting affect students' motivation to want to become a better reader? My second research question was: will using individual student goal setting increase reading level? Participants and setting. This study had 6 first grade participants. From the 6 students, 3 of them were boys and the other 3 were girls. Ages of the participants were 6 to 7 years old. These students were below grade level expectations in the area of reading. All the participants struggled with focus in the classroom as well as having a growth mindset. Many of the participants stated at one point before the study began that they did not know how to read, or I think reading is too hard. The environment in which the study took place was in a regular education classroom in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This area is very diverse with socioeconomic backgrounds ranging from high to low class, but the participants in this study did vary in backgrounds but having very similar home support. Procedures. My study did begin by creating 2 groups of students. I chose 6 first grade students with the same reading level, which was at a level C. The data that I then collected was from running records from Fountas and Pinnell, which is our benchmark assessment system used in my school district. Once I had chosen students and collected baseline data, I made decisions as to which students would be in my goal setting group and which would be in my non-goal setting group. From there, I asked pre-questions, and it was just a 4-question pre and post. Then goals were created with my goal group, which were 3 students. The goals were stamina goals to build their reading stamina, and also reading level goals as to where they wanted their reading level to be. I met with my goal setting group once a week to record anecdotal notes and how behaviors have changed and to share their progress. On weeks 1, 3, and 6, I gave running records using Fountas and Pinnell benchmarks to see if all 6 student participants were raising their reading levels at all. To conclude, I gave those post questions, which were the same as pre, but I gave them at the end to see if there was any change in response. The data sources I used were the pre and post interview questions, the reading stamina logs. This is where students were held accountable each day to track their reading stamina into a log. The participants used a timer to start. 3 of my students in the goal setting group did set goals on how they wanted their stamina to be raised. The other 3 did not set goals but did track their stamina. I also used Fountas and Pinnell running records, and I used reading progress goal charts with the 3 students who were in my goal setting group. These charts showed growth in their reading and also had their goal. The results. The data that I collected did come to 3 themes that I found. One being that goal setting has an effect on students' outlook on reading. This was determined through the pre and post questions that were given to all 6 students. The 3 students that were in my goal setting group, I found that they had more positive responses to all 4 questions in the post interview. And the 3 students in the non-goal setting group, only 1 student of the 3 showed more positive responses to 3 out of the 4 questions that were given. I found a trend that occurred for the 3 goal setting students. This trend was in response to questions 1 and 3 of my pre and post questions, which were, do you enjoy reading and how do you feel about reading? I found that in the goal setting students' responses, they included that they did want to become a better reader and they enjoyed reading because they got to achieve their goals. They also stated that they like meeting their goals, so they are enjoying reading more. Another theme that occurred was that when goals are in place, reading stamina was growing. Looking at these charts, you can see that there was an increase in reading stamina for the goal setting students, but also for the non-goal setting students. I did find that the growth in the goal setting students was much higher than in the non-goal setting group of students. So there is growth, but with the goal setting students, much higher growth. The last theme that I found from my data was that the more challenging of the goal, the higher reading level of the student was achieved, meaning that students that made goals were able to achieve higher reading levels than the students that were not creating goals, but the students that did create goals found. The last result that I found was that the more challenging of the goal, the higher reading level that was achieved. For my 3 students that set goals for themselves, at the beginning of week 1, they each were at a baseline of reading level C. Students were able to choose their own goals. From my literature review, I found that they want to be more moderate goals, but I did allow the students to pick what they wanted. So 2 of the 3 students chose a goal of reading at a level E. To me, this was a challenging goal to meet in 6 weeks. The other student chose the goal of a level D, which was more of a moderate goal. Looking at figure 5, you can see the results of the running records, and both students who chose level E as a goal both achieved their goal. As for the student who chose the level D as their goal, that student also achieved their goal, but it makes me question if the more challenging the goal, could they achieve higher results? Conclusion. An increase in student reading stamina can come from goal setting and weekly meetings, I found. Students who did not set goals did increase their reading level and reading stamina, but the growth was not as high compared to the students who did create goals. Increased reading level and stamina occurred in this study, which tells me that there is an increase in effort and motivation from the students. This study has raised some questions for me and left me wanting to increase the amount of students in my study, as well as incorporating students with not only low reading levels, but also high reading levels and at grade reading levels. Ultimately, goal setting has shown to only be a positive in my classroom. This study resulted in an increase in student reading levels, as well as students have found a new motivation for achievement in the area of reading. Future action, I plan on using goal setting with all my students, making a larger study group, increasing my pool of students and participants. I will want to include lower level students, but also at grade level and higher level students. Challenge level of goals. I want to increase the challenge of the goal to see if students can raise their achievement level. And lastly, for future action, weekly meetings. I found that having those weekly meetings with my goal setting students, it did build motivation for the students to work towards their goal, and it also gave me a chance to discuss with them their goals and their progress. Thank you for taking your time and listening. Have a great night.